Welcome to Witchy Business, hosted by me, Emily.
And me, Anna. This is your weekly dose of friendly business chat with a witchy flair.
Through these personal and vulnerable conversations, we share our business journey with you,
highlighting the links to our overall growth journey in the hopes to make you feel more supported as you share your magic.
This episode is sponsored by Plannher, a timeless and undated planner and journal created to help witches stay organised while in flow.
We especially love the pages for new moon manifestations and full moon reflections.
For additional support on how to harness the energy of the moon while working on your business,
subscribe to our Substack, your link in our show notes. Hi, welcome to the fourth episode of Witchy Business. Today's episode's really special to me, especially because we're inviting Vienda Maria to join us and to speak about Plannher, which supports us as a podcast, which she created. And we speak also about the power of collaborations because her and I actually work together. And this episode was super special for me because I got to have my two business besties on the same podcast and introduce them both. So yeah, I loved it. Hi everyone, welcome to our fourth episode of Witchy Business, and today is a really special one because we have a guest. So we've got Vienda is joining us today. So why do we have Vienda as our first guest? Well, the last episode we shared about the power of collaborations, and I actually work with Vienda on a really exciting project as well called the Mentor Training. So it just made a lot of sense to have Vienda on following that episode. And so yeah, Vienda, if you'd like to introduce yourself, over to you.
Sure. When people ask me to introduce myself, I'm always like, you mean as a person or professionally? So professionally, I am a psychology-informed personal growth educator, and I've been mentoring mostly women, a handful of men, for almost 9 years now. And I've created, I think, 15 courses over that period of time as well that people have taken. And that's evolved actually recently, and my work has branched off into the mentor training, which Anna mentioned earlier, and also Plannher, which I believe is the sponsor of Witchy Business.
Exactly. So yeah, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Plannher? Just tell everyone about it.
With absolute joy. So Plannher is a planner, like a diary or a calendar, more like a diary, I guess, and a journaling book all in one. And it's designed for women. It's designed in a really intuitive way to work with the moon phases, to work with a more fluid and instinctual way. It's less structured. It offers just enough space for you to map out your days and your weeks, but leave a lot of space for fluidity and for flow and for your intuition to guide you, because I feel like that's missing a lot. Like for me personally, I get really overwhelmed when things are really, really structured. Like I reject them. And so having said that, structure is also healthy. Like it's that masculine part that helps create a really safe and healthy container for our lives to exist in, or for us to have the spiritual experience that we're having in these human vessels. Without structure, we lose everything. It's like not having a skeletal bone system, then we're just slugs, right? And so I wanted to create a system and a structure that gave me the freedom to feel really fluid and intuitive and free, while also feeling really held and having a place where I can put my appointments and put my love to-do lists and write down all my thoughts and know how much money was coming in and out and everything. I just covered everything that I personally use as systems, but in a way that aligned to my own belief system and my way of doing it. And I couldn't find that anywhere else. So I invented it, and now it's called Plannher.
It is. I absolutely love mine. Plannher's been around for 3 years now? Is it? Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to think. Close to 3 years. It'll come up to 3 years in like June this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, that is what we're all about as well, right, Anna? It's like that, the balancing the masculine and feminine, and it's such a perfect fit. I would love to hear what your journey was like starting that. So you mentioned that it was everything that you thought were missing, everything that you wanted to create, but what was your actual journey like to birthing that idea and bringing it to life?
Longer than you would imagine. I'll kind of tell you from the beginning. So years ago, I used to travel a lot more than I do now. And I was basically living this nomadic lifestyle for 5 or 6 years, like nonstop. I just kept traveling and traveling in my own slow kind of way. I would spend like 3 to 6 to 12 months in a place and then move on. And I remember getting to Bali. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. It must have been like 8 or 9 years ago. Or maybe 7 years ago. Anyway, doesn't matter. Getting carried away here. And like unpacking when I got to my villa and kind of laughing at the fact that I had to unpack 7 notebooks and was thinking, my goodness, like this is ridiculous. Because I had a notebook for journaling, a notebook for client notes, a notebook for like business work thoughts and ideas, a notebook for my money tracking, a notebook for my like calendar kind of thing. Like I had 7. I can't remember what the other 2 were, but oh yeah, one was for new moon and full moon journaling. One was, I don't know. Anyway, so I had these notebooks and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I am a nomad and I can't keep traveling with like freaking 7 notebooks. This is embarrassing. Like, what am I doing?
It must be so heavy in your bag as well.
I remember my boyfriend at the time would make fun of me. He's like, you have more books than clothes. And I was like, how dare you? It's very important. I am running a business on the road, you slacker. And I started researching to try and see if there was a way I could like bring all this stuff together. I couldn't find anything that really came close to it. What I did find was a filofax. I don't know what, like, some people call them a planner, but basically it's like a binder, an A5 binder, where you can put all the paper in and you can create the segments yourself and things like that. And I was like, okay, like instead of having 7 notebooks, I could have one big notebook with 7 sections in it. And then I've got like all these different things happening, but they're together in one thing. And then my boyfriend can't make fun of me because I only have one book for that. And I ordered this filofax. It took a really long time to come because it was Bali and postage in that country is almost impossible. And so I created the system, and it's basically the system that Plannher is now. So it was like the calendar, the moon journaling, the money tracking, the future visioning, the like everything. And it evolved over time. And I kept like sometimes just posting about it. Every time I posted about it, people were like, tell me about the system, like tell me about the system. And I just wrote a blog post. I was like, this is the system, you can do it yourself.
I was one of those people that asked, tell me what is the system? System obsessed, and I had then a filofax and followed it. Yeah, that was right.
Oh, I love it. And then people were like, can you turn this into a thing? And I liked the idea. I was like, sure. And this is where it got tricky. 2 things happened. One is every time I did research on getting it made, all roads led to China. And I have a personal preference not to get things made there, just because I know what the conditions are like, and that it's probably one of the least ethical places where you can get anything made. And that doesn't align with my personal values. And like it just didn't feel right. The other thing was that I don't know if it was a block from me or if it was something external. Like sometimes you have an idea, but the idea is not ready for the world yet. But it just didn't move forward. It didn't move forward. Every time I did research, every time I tried to move things forward, nothing happened. And so then 3 or 4 years later, I moved to Mexico. And it was after a breathwork session that I did that I had this really strong feeling like you have to follow up on this idea again. Like you have to go and try and make something happen. So like we've had like since like the concept kind of was born in the Filofax form until then, like there's 3 years have already passed. So, you know, sometimes our ideas don't come into fruition. I think it's really important to recognize that everything has its own timing.
Yeah.
So I had this really strong urge to revisit the idea, and I started researching again for a place where I could make this thing. And I emailed so many places. I mean, emailed like I just kept emailing. I even emailed places in China because I was like, if this is my only resort, then I'm going to just at least figure it out, or at least learn about the process a little bit. And I have to say, like the Chinese companies I contacted were very eager, and I just didn't like, they were just too eager. They were too eager. And I like that's always like a red flag to me when someone chases you down for something. I'm like, whoa, what's the whoa? And then like, and I emailed like all over the world. I emailed people where I thought they could do what I wanted to do. And then finally I got an email back from a man called Alexander who had a small print house in Bulgaria. And he was like, I love your idea. I can create what you want. Like, let's discuss the next steps. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is the only person who's ever replied to me where I've been like, oh my God, this could actually happen. And so then I was like, okay, things are moving forward. I hired a designer to design my concept. So like I created it all. Like I created this huge Google folder full of pages and pages and pages of all the content, including like an introduction, how to use, and like everything, like detailed. And then she just had to sort of make it beautiful, essentially, with my vision and with my ideas. And some of the design actually comes from my tattoo. You see that there. Oh, yeah. Which is the logo. And it started to come together. Yes, exactly. And it started to come together, which was so exciting. And so what's that like? Yeah, like 3 or 4 years after the idea first was seeded, it started to manifest into reality. And then I had a problem. I was in Mexico. The book was in Bulgaria getting printed, and I needed to make some decisions around how I was going to do that. So I just had 500 printed the first time because I was like, well, like this is a trial and I'm going to see if it works or not. So I decided to move to the UK to actually like do the postage and shipping and handling of all those books, those first 500 books myself, because I wanted to learn the process. I wanted to really understand it from the bones. And it was a test. Like, if I'm going to risk something, I'm willing to risk my time and my energy. And I moved to the UK, and a week later, the country locked down because of a silly thing called COVID. I was like, what the hell is happening? And then a few months later, so like that was in late January, early February of 2020. And then in, I think, end of May, the books were sent to the UK, and beginning of June they arrived. I remember like this truck arrived outside of my apartment and just like dropped this huge cling film wrapped mountain of boxes on the road. And I was like, are you gonna take them up? And he was like, no. I was like, excuse me? He was like, well, I thought I was dropping this off at a commercial distribution location, not a house. And I was like, well, I thought you would carry the fucking 500 books up to my apartment, which is on the 3rd floor. It was very stressful. Anyway, my neighbors, bless them, like neighbors from also it was lockdown, so we're all bored as fuck. Am I allowed to say that here? All these neighbors, like, you know, everyone's peeking their head out, like, what's happening? I'm like,
something to do.
Exactly. I'm like,
Entertainment.
guys, help carry these boxes up to my apartment and I will buy you wine, please. So suddenly I had like 7 neighbors from around my apartment come, and like we were shifting those boxes as fast as he could, because he just dropped them in the middle of the road. So no cars would go past. It was kind of like, it was a lot, but it was also super exciting. And that was it. After that, I shipped those first 500 planners from that apartment in Brighton in the UK. And it became quite a popular concept and idea and book that's ever growing and evolving. And here we are today. Now it goes from a distribution center. I no longer post out every single planner myself. And it's evolved into its own little brand.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
My pleasure.
Do you think that because when you were like, I'm going to make the decision, I'm going to move to the UK, and then things started happening and moving quite quickly, although lockdown, but was there anything in there that was like you weren't ready to move before that moment? And so this idea, like, you know, there's the reason why that there were blocks coming up for you, and then as soon as you made that decision, it was like, right, okay, it's ready.
I made the decision to move once the planner was already in process, because I decided I wanted to do that first print run myself. So I think once, like after that breathwork session, where I made that decision, after that, for some reason, things just opened up and they flowed. But there was a lot of blocks before that, for who knows what reason, because maybe I would have moved. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't guess my past. I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think that, well, because I live my life quite intuitively and I intentionally don't try to plan too far ahead, or I leave a lot of space for the mystery of life to unfold, allow things to sort of guide me and move me forward. And so there's not like a structure to like, I'm going to do this and now I'm going to do that. I'm more like, these are my intentions. These are kind of the things, my visions that I want to lean towards. And I'm so open to how they unfold.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say how I know you're a manifesting generator, and it was like you waited for, you know, the invitation and you responded to that because people asked you literally to create it. You just waited for it to feel like it was right, you know, to move forward with it. And I love that. And I love Plannher, and I love that it sponsors Witchy Business. Thank you. I know there was a post that Vienda shared that you really enjoyed.
It ties in really nicely to this as well, because you shared recently this post about how you wouldn't work if you didn't have to, because you love what you do, but you've kind of created this business around your life versus, like, I guess, creating your life for business, if that makes sense. And that, for me, that really comes from everything that you were just saying about how you lead your business from intuition and you leave space for that. Can you share more about that post and all of that?
Yeah, I would love to. Also, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I mean, that post actually came from a conversation that I had with a friend of mine who's quite a well-known photographer. We're sitting in a cafe in London, and we're like, laughing about the fact that we kind of have ladies of leisure lives, but also, I don't like using the word hustle, but we like get our hands dirty. We don't mind getting our hands dirty. Like we like getting involved in life and getting involved in things and trying things and taking risks and going there. But that there's this desire to like, so when I wrote about I wouldn't work if I didn't have to, it was actually like, if I didn't have to make money, I wouldn't work at all. Yeah. As in like, I wouldn't do anything unless it was for pleasure. and yet I've created a business and a life and a lifestyle and these things that support. And that was always the intention from the beginning. I never created my work to work. I created my work to support my lifestyle. And anytime that my work isn't supporting my lifestyle, I adjust it and shift it. And I have to say, like, it goes through phases. So something that I've learned over the years is there are times where you have your work and you have your income and you have freedom and it's really fun and it's really easy and you're kind of coasting and it feels really good. But those times come from other times where you've devoted yourself to building structures and getting systems and organizing certain things and really put some work into things in order to create that freedom. And so what I notice happens, and I feel like I'm kind of going off topic, but I'm going to try and circle it back, is there's like times where you're like, oh, I have so much space and freedom and it's so much fun and this is really good. And then there's times where you're like, I really need to like put a lot of time and intention and vision and effort into this thing in order to create this next level of space and time and freedom. And so when I wrote that post about not having to work, it's because the last almost year I've been going through one of those times where it's been less about the spacious time and freedom and more about really focusing on the intention and vision and putting in the work and putting in the hours and just being devoted to the next phase, which then will create more space and freedom and time and all of those things that I value so much. And when you're in that place where you're putting in that effort and you're doing it with love and you're doing it with care and you're doing it because you want to, you still have the human response where you desire the contrast, which is the other thing. And like I'm working towards the other thing and it's coming, it's so close again, I can taste it, but I'm just not there right now. And so like I'm like, fuck it, I don't want to work.
I love the honesty in it. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that was just like the most beautiful way to talk about creating structure to allow ease and just a great balance of the masculine and feminine. And I think you're such a great example for that. So
and I found it so inspiring when you shared that, because it really is a real example of how to create that balance. And there are times in business, you know, when it's like up and down, isn't it? And it's like finding, and we talk about this a lot, it's like finding that balance, but knowing that if there's a period of like the doing, I don't like the word hustle either, but you know, getting your hands dirty, then that's all because you're actually creating something that's, you know, it's like bigger picture thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm not sure, but I imagine that your audience is probably in the first couple of years of their business, and there can be quite a lot of like frustration and impatience and like, oh, when's my stuff coming and when is it happening? Sorry, my cat has just decided to join us.
Oh, hi, Danger.
This is Danger Zone. He's Mexican. He's also number one love language is touch, so he likes to snuggle a lot. So in that first year or two, there can be this sense of like, oh my god, when's my stuff coming? What is happening? Why am I not? And that is because you're in that place where you have to get your hands dirty. You have to, and that's why business is not about arriving at some place where you have the space and time and the freedom, because once you've arrived there, you're like, I'm ready for this next level of space and time and freedom. And then you're like, I have to go back into that place where I get my hands dirty. So those first couple of years, you have to get in and get messy and allow yourself to pivot and try things and let go of things and really address your shadows and the blocks and the things that come up for you, because a lot of your own ego stories and narratives will come to the surface that will stop you from moving forward. And it's so important to know that this is necessary. Like, you have to go through that. I'm going to put it this way: you have to go through that hardship or those challenges in order to strengthen you. It's almost like a workout. It's strengthen your core to a level where you can hold the space of the container or hold the width and the breadth of what you're wanting to call into your life. Because when you're starting, you're small, but you don't have the capacity or strength to hold what it is that you want to create. And so you have to go through that challenge to become able to even hold space for that. It's not fun, but it's worth it.
Oh, I just love that. That's like the best inspirational speech that should be plastered everywhere when you start a business. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Was there like a moment for you when you when in those early years where you were like, okay, like I don't know, like you noticed like that shift, or yeah
there was a definite leap that happened, probably, I would say like a year and 2 months in, or maybe it was just under a year. Actually, it wasn't quite a year yet. It was just under a year, maybe like 9 or 10 months. And I'd been doing all the things, and I was scared and frustrated. I scared mostly from a financial perspective, because I was like, I'm making money, but I'm not really making enough to feel comfortable to support myself. And that is kind of horrible, because I also don't want to take on another job, because that's going to eat away at my time and energy that I want to pour into this thing that I'm creating. That was probably my number one, like, annoying, horrible feeling. And then just like feeling, in some ways, like sometimes feeling like a fraud, in some ways feeling like I didn't know enough, in some ways feeling like, what the hell was I doing? But like, what the hell was I talking about? What was I posting about? And it's like, I have education, I have passion, I have interest, I have, like, it's all of that is there, but I didn't feel very secure and certain in myself in that space, because it was new. It was also new, and also the way that online business works, it changes so rapidly all the time, that learning to stay with the changes is also a thing of its own. And like I had clients, but like, not enough, and I had things happening, but it just didn't feel like it was moving in the way that I wanted it to move. And then it was really like, in a very short period of time, something happened. So I'd been working. I was working a lot on my limiting beliefs. I was doing a lot of inner work. Like, I literally would spend 80% of my working days just handling my own shit, because there was just so much of it. And I needed my relationship to money, my relationship to time, my relationship to my own value, my relationship, like, there was just so much to handle. And that was a huge part of my work then, because I was like, well, if I don't have clients, I'm my own client. And then a few things happened. A friend of mine invited me to come and help him at an event, just to give me a little bit of extra cash. I flew in to see him. And I was suddenly in a different environment, which has always helps me. Like that's why I love travel so much. Like different environments really amplify my connection within, and also my ability to take in inspiration. So I was in a different environment. I was meeting a lot of interesting people all of a sudden, very, very quickly within a few days. And then one night in his apartment, actually, I think I was sleeping on his sofa or something. I woke up with a dream for a program called 10 Weeks of Free, I think it was called. And it's my first course I ever created, but it was like a live coaching program where that ran for 10 weeks, obviously. And I would see the people who bought the program every week for half an hour, one-on-one. And then they had like weekly, and they all had the same like weekly steps and processes and things to go through. And so I had this, like, I woke up with this from a dream and like just sat down and wrote the whole program in like 3 hours. And somehow, I don't know what happened, but it was like this big shift happened. And it was the first time I made like more than enough money to cover my bills across 3 months. I signed all these new clients. It was really fun. It was really easy. I enjoyed the process because they already had homework they had to complete by the call, by the time we had a call. So when we came to the call, all I had to do was say like, how was the homework, basically? Like, you know, I would ask them what their process was and what had come up for them. And all I had to do was listen to them talk and be able to hold space for them to process what, or like go through the process of what we were working through. And it was incredible. And it was a shift that happened like literally in a few days.
Wow.
I love that, because in there you created the structure and then it flowed through. So there's that system again of you created, the structure and what they had to do every week, and you would have had to put in work to have that automated and all of that stuff happening in the background.
Yeah.
You could just be there and hold space for them.
Yeah. It was really interesting. And I think when you're new, it's so important to find ways to feed that inspiration and that need to connect to parts of yourself. Because what happened with that program is that I dug deeper and I trusted myself more than I ever had before. Whereas before I like, because I didn't trust myself fully, because I felt uncertain, the stuff I was putting out was a little bit diluted. It wasn't as authentic and full of integrity because I didn't trust myself. So I was trying to like please the masses based on what I thought people wanted. And with this programming, it was a fucking dream. Like, there was I didn't find that anywhere else except my own like dream landscape. So like, I think that level of authenticity and owning your stuff and trusting yourself really shines through energetically, and people are drawn to that.
Yeah. If anyone is listening and needs proof, to listen to their dreams and their intuition calling, then this is it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that story. So to kind of wrap things back up, I would love for you to speak to how, your thoughts on the power of collaborations, because I know it's something that you do a lot, obviously. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you have to share on that, please.
Yeah, with pleasure. I mean, another word for collaboration is relationships. And collaboration is something that happens quite intuitively or as an extension of the relationships that we form with other people. So one of the most profound and important aspects of my business has always been relationship building. Relationships with clients, with journalists, with other people in the field, with not even other people in the field, but other people who have larger audiences who are doing cool stuff where their messaging aligns with your own. Just building relationships is so profoundly powerful in life, and especially in business. You know, there's that saying that says, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yep.
It's true. It's true. And often those people that you see who are having really powerful, amazing, successful experiences in their lives, those come from the relationships they have, not from their skill level. Often their skills are very mediocre. In fact, I have a good friend and I admire her so much, like admire her almost with a little tiny bit of envy, with like a healthy kind of envy, where I'm like, how does she do it? She is so good at making the right relationships with people that just torpedo her forward. And it's not because she has anything special. It's because she's really good at building and nurturing the right relationships with the right people. And it's incredible. And so what happens then is then you collaborate with those people, and this is what drives everyone forward. And yeah, so collaboration as a result of the relationships you have is such a powerful business strategy, but also just life strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And you guys are collaborating too this year. Did you want to talk about how that came about? And
yeah, I'd love to. Oh, you want to go for it, Anna?
I'll just share like the very start, and then I'd love to hear obviously what you have to say about it. I remember you and I just having like, because we're friends, we don't just work together, and we were having a chat, and you were talking to me about the mentor training, which is the business that we collaborate on. And you were telling me, I just need someone who's like the yang to my yin, and who can bring structure and look after more of the business development and the marketing side. And I was just sitting in front of you like, I would really, really like to be that person. And yeah, then we had conversations about that. But I also remember when I hung up from that call being like, who do you think you are, offering that kind of, saying, oh, I can help. And I remember having this big wave of like, I can't do this. This is so much bigger than me. All this, like, I can't, I'm too small. I don't have enough experience, which is bullshit. Like, I've got 10 years experience in marketing. That was literally what I did for most of my working life. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
And then it happened, didn't it?
And then it happened.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, for me to even come to that decision was a huge step in my own growth. So 2022 was an enormous year of growth for me as a human being, as a person, as a woman, as a business owner, or as someone who runs a company, actually, because at the start of 2022, I sort of transferred my business and turned it into a company at the advice of my accountant. And I had to really start thinking about how I was going to allow myself to be supported, because I'd gotten to a point in my business, and like when I say my business, that includes Plannher, that includes TMT, that includes my courses, that includes my private client, like everything, all the things I do under the umbrella of Vienda Maria. I knew I needed to start bringing in support to be able to keep moving forward, because I was maxed out. I had hit the limit of what I could do as one human being. But it was really hard for me to even conceptualizing handing stuff over and sharing my work with someone, for a few different reasons. One was, I'm a bit of a creative control freak. I mean, like, I can own that, because it's true. Like, I have a vision. I know where I want things to look. And because I know, like, because it's in my brain, I can create it. Sometimes I feel like sharing that or handing that over or explaining that to someone else can be so time consuming. But that was like a real limiting belief in me, because actually once you really bring someone on board and they understand you, so much more can happen. And it's incredible, especially working with Anna. I'm like so grateful for her all the time. But like I had to work through a lot of stuff around being supported, not just being supported in my work, but in being supported in my life. And it's really interesting. I believe in energetics. Not I believe in energetics. I work with energetics, and I always have. And something really interesting that had started happening towards the end of 2021 is I kept getting this weird recurring sort of like backache on the left side of my body, and the left is feminine and the back is support. And it's like I don't feel supported as a person, as a woman. And like, so like the whole everything was screaming at me like, you need to learn how to be supported by others. And my small inner child, who had learned at a young age that it wasn't safe to be supported by others, because I came from a familial background where I wasn't supported, and when I was, it was not nice. Let's just put it that way. It wasn't good. And so it didn't feel safe, you know. So I had all of this stuff I needed to work through to even be able to start calling in more support. And so I did a lot of work around that. I did a work with that around that with my therapist, with my hypnotherapist, with my craniosacral therapist. Like I was like throwing everything I had at it. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready. I can do this. And I actually ended up hiring a woman who was the director of HR from Mac in Germany, who happens to be a friend of mine. I was like, and so she's like hired thousands of people in her career. She's really good at it. And I was like, dude, I need help. And she literally like sat me down in this sushi restaurant one day and was like, took me through the whole process of like writing a description, putting out what you wanted, the interview process, like the different things I had to ask, the like everything. She just like took me through everything and basically mentored me through that process, which was so powerful and so helpful. And I needed that. And it was like the first time I got support from her. Then I hired Anna, who came on board as a, what are we calling it, assistant director.
Yeah.
Is that what we're calling it? I'm like labels, schmabels, whatever. We're humans doing weird things. Nobody knows.
We work together.
Yeah. I also hired someone to take on Plannher as a brand manager. And I have a third person doing admin now. So I went from nothing to 3 people in like a 6-month time span, and it was really powerful. But like that was because I had to evolve and grow and change in order to make that possible. And now it's such a relief. I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful for Anna being there and doing the things that she does. Like I think last night I went to bed and I was like, Anna better not quit, because I don't know how the fuck I know how, like I'm gonna do this.
I'm not quitting. Not going anywhere.
I don't know. I was really tired. I was like, oh my God, what if I like have to do this by myself? I will die.
You will not. I am 100% in.
Thank you.
And it's now on the podcast, so
yeah. You can use
exactly.
that.
I'll save that sound bite if I ever need it. You promised you'd never leave me.
Said it live, and lots of people listened. I'm really not going anywhere. And I just love it because, again, you see, like, actually in practice, this, you need to focus to create a bigger space to hold something that's bigger than you and be able to be there. And for me, on the other side, TMT is so much bigger than me, and it's scary, but then I'm held by you. Like I never feel alone in it, and I know that when we have catch-ups about it, I can tell you, and I have, you know, oh, this feels really huge, and so it's helping me to grow in a really healthy way. And so I just feel like, yeah, it just shows the power of collaborations on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to hear about all the work that you had to do to even just get into that space, because I think a lot of people do feel like that. And you know, lots of people say, well, if you hire people to work with you, or if you do collaborations, then you see that growth much quicker as well, because you have the space, but then not really thinking about all of that prep work, you know.
Exactly. You make such a good point. I think people, especially when they start a business, they just see like the external, the outside of how a business evolves and how a business grows. And like, there's obvious, like, then this happens and then you reach more people and blah, 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 blah. And yes, that's happening. But underneath, in order for those things to happen, you have to really be able to own where you're at and be able to hold space for this kind of growth. And again, I'm going to compare it to muscles. Like, you're not going to be able to lift more unless you build up to being able to lift more. And it's the same with business. You're not going to be able to hold a level of growth, of income, of success, unless you've built the strength to be able to hold that. And the inner work and the inner process and the mental and psychological and emotional changes that need to happen in that process are so enormous and so profound and so important. The external stuff won't happen, and it won't work otherwise if those foundations aren't there. Like the girl who started a business 8-9 years ago, this girl, there's no way, A, she would have imagined that I would be doing any of the things that I'm doing now. B, that she had the capacity to do them without going through the challenges that got me to where I am now. And that's true for everyone. And not just in business. I think that's life.
Yeah. Well, I love that, because I love that, because when you, like, even where you are now, you probably have an idea of where you're going to be in, say, 5 years, 10 years, but it might not be, it might be so much more than that. And I think that's such a great point, because when you're starting out in business, you think you know where you want to go, and you think you know what that looks like, but then it's kind of letting go of the control, letting go of that vision, because otherwise it can't grow into what it could be.
Yeah, which actually perfectly brings us back to the beginning of our conversation when you said, what I've noticed is that you've created a business that supports you rather than you working for your business. The vision that I hold for myself in 5 years' time isn't so much of like what my business will look like, but rather how I will feel and what my lifestyle will look like, and the business that then would support that kind of lifestyle. So it's much easier for me to be like, this is the kind of life I want to be living. Like, this is kind of space and time I want. This is the kind of wealth I want. This is the kind of positive impact in the world that I want to be having, la, 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 than it is for me to be like, this is what my business is going to look like.
Yes. Yeah. This year, I'm trying to bring more creativity into my week, and so every week I actually have set time just to be creative. And I know that sounds like quite weird, like setting the structured time.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah, because otherwise it won't get done, because you know there's always so many things that could be getting done. So I love this idea of, like, because I know that I want to bring creativity into my life. So the way to do that is to try and structure my business around that, and my time around that. So that's my intention.
So lovely. And how beautifully it's going to feed into and have a ripple effect into the rest of your life, including your business as well.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like this is a beautiful spot to end this super inspirational and nourishing chat. Thank you so much, Vienda, for speaking with us.
Such a pleasure. Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to your weekly dose of witchy business.
If you love us as much as we love us, please leave a 5-star review to help us spread the magic.
Thank you again to our sponsor, Plannher. Please support them the way they support us.
And don't forget to follow the link in the show notes to sign up to our Substack. You can also watch us on YouTube. It's at Witchy Business.
And you can also follow us on Instagram at We Are Witchy Business. Emily is at _Emily Tyson, and I am at Anna.Jordan with an E.